Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening. A couple announcements. First off, the case for 550 Titus Avenue, preliminary and final site plan approvals has been postponed. The applicant withdrew from tonight and just postponed it to a future date. He didn't give any indication at this time,
No.
right? Okay. And based on that, I'm going to propose that we move an agenda case, that we move I-Square to the top of the agenda, since we have legal here too. So if there's no opposition, do I have to make a motion? I don't, this is a workshop, no. So we're
Just a workshop.
We're going to do that. Okay?
So that brings us to, can you hear me? Okay. Case number PB 2024-05-05. Request by Michael Nolan, I-Square, for final site plan approval conforming to existing as-built drawings on premises 775 Titus Avenue in a mixed-use commercial district pursuant to settlement agreement and mutual release dated April 18th, 2024, between the town and I-Square in a litigation captioned Town of Arundequoit versus I-Square LLC, index number E as in Edward 202-301-4260.
Thank you, Michelle. We actually have Eric here representing Nixon Hargraves, right?
Nixon Peabody.
Nixon Peabody, sorry. Could you just give the board a little bit of our purview in this particular case? And
Sure.
Just a little bit of background.
So there's a settlement agreement that was included in the board materials that everyone should have received. So this, as I'm sure everyone knows, this issue goes back quite a ways. But in November of last year, the town filed suit against I-Square LLC and alleged that there were certain deviations, that the I-Square development had been built and constructed in a way that deviated from the approved final building drawings that were approved by the planning board. Through the course of that litigation, the parties ultimately reached a settlement, and that's the document that you all have. It was executed in April of this year, and one of the terms that the town felt was important before agreeing to ultimately dismiss the action is that I-Square come back to the planning board with as-built drawings of the development and get approval for those specific areas that were raised in the town's complaint that deviated from the approved site plan. And so you'll see in the settlement agreement, it's paragraph 2E lays out the specific deviations that the town alleged that the current construction of the I-Square development has from the as-built, the approved final site plan, including the number of residential units constructed in the Brookside cottages, number of parking spaces in the Brookside cottages, a parking lot in the northeast corner of the development where the final approved site plan had depicted that I think a 9,000 square foot building would be located. A curb cut along the west side of Lorraine Drive, which, as the town's position, was not depicted in the approved site plan, and then outdoor dining at I-Square, or at the Arundequoit Brewing Company, excuse me. So it's my understanding that I-Square has submitted as-built drawings of the property, and so per the terms of the settlement agreement, it's the planning board's job to review those and review the specific deviations that I just listed and that are outlined in the settlement agreement, and either approve those or approve those, with conditions that would have to be completed before final approval for the as-built site would be granted. And so that is one of the necessary conditions before the lawsuit will be dismissed by the town.
So can I ask you a question?
Of course.
So it says here, for the avoidance of doubt, nothing in the foregoing shall foreclose or prohibit the planning board from requiring any modifications to the items outlined in the subparagraph C above. which you mentioned, most of them, as a condition of granting final approval. Nor shall the foregoing require the planning board to grant final approval. I take it our purview should be just to these items?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
that's what I want clarification on. Okay. Any other questions from other members?
We're only looking at this piece of the property then,
Correct.
okay?
Yes.
And if we determine that something else is adequate, that would require us to do a deviation from the as-built, that would be in our prerogative, right?
I'm not sure I understand. So in looking at the as-built,
I'll just tell you what I'm going to ask
Okay,
about.
sure, of course.
It's the parking.
Mhm.
There's a lot on Lorraine Drive that was approved,
right,
that was supposed to accommodate all of the parking
Mhm.
for the business,
okay,
where the one-story building was supposed to be on Titus Avenue, turned into a parking lot.
right. And so is your question related to that, the parking lot where the building was supposed to be constructed?
My question is, the Lorraine Drive was meant to provide adequate parking for the business on the plan here. That's why we were approving the one-story building.
Okay. So,
And right now, there's parking there, which was not approved.
right, and so that's the deviation that we're
Right.
talking about, is the parking that was not approved. And so it's up to the board to determine whether it will approve that parking.
Okay,
I believe it's on Titus Avenue, is where the building was supposed to be constructed, not on Lorraine, it's on
right,
Titus Avenue.
that's why I'm asking.
Not Lorraine. Is your mic on?
No, he says the parking that was approved was on Lorraine.
Right,
Back of the I-square was approved.
so that parking was approved and it's there, and so we don't have the ability.
But that was
to-
there to accommodate parking for the bar, or for the brewery.
Understood. So but I think your concern is with the
Talking about
parking, the additional parking lot that
Right.
was not
I think so.
approved. So you can't do anything about the parking that was approved and exists. The issue is the parking that was not.
No, I'm not asking if I'm going to change that. What I'm saying is, I don't have to rely on a parking requirement for the brewery and include the parking lot that was not approved, right?
In calculating the parking requirements for the brewery, no, you don't need to review
Right.
that unapproved parking lot.
All right.
Any other questions from board members? Mr. Nolan, would you like to present to the board? You're welcome.
Good evening, Board. Can you hear me? Is this on? Okay. Mike Nolan, I-Square, offices now located at 500 Bakers Park. And I agree with everything that Eric had said and told you as far as the purview and the items that are up. But I think it is worthy, as you're making decisions on these, to understand the background of those 4 or 5 topics, and because some of the information that was alleged in the lawsuit was incorrect, but we never argued the lawsuit far enough into it to debate the particulars of those items. So, namely, and Ellen, while we're on that, on the subject of the parking lot on Lorraine, the one thing that did come into question that is in your purview was the curb cut on Lorraine Drive. And the lawsuit had alleged that that was not originally part of the site plan, but it was. It was part of the approved site plan that you and a number of the other board members that were here back then did approve. If you'll remember, we had a great lengthy debate over the sidewalk that adjoins, that separates, or on either side of that curb opening. I did bring the minutes with me to validate my position that that curb cut was approved, because it's in the meeting minutes. But moreover, your question that's going to be before you in this is that when those minutes were produced, the senior living hadn't been built. Lorraine Drive still had 7 or 8 or 9 residents on it at the far end of the road. the planning board had required me to block the entrance of that parking lot off or cone that off until that such a time that I don't know how clear we were on that until such a time, but my understanding was until the cottages were fully built out and that the remaining end of the road tenants that were on Lorraine Drive were no longer there. So we did do that. There are still 3 remaining single-family homes on Lorraine Drive that are occupied and owned by others. They are all in agreement for that entrance to remain open and perfectly comfortable with it. In fact, the one of the homes where they have 5 cars and a 2-car driveway, they utilize that during the winter so that they don't have to park on the roadside. Some of the other items that were discussed, it was talked about a lot about the building in that front parking lot on Titus Avenue. That parking lot on Titus Avenue, that site plan was never approved with a building on it. And it leaves us in this gray area, but again, it was one of the things that never made, the litigation never made it far enough to debate the facts of the matter. But if you go back to our letter of intent to the planning board and your decisions, each of those exclude that. It was number building 6. And our letter of intent, our application to the planning board and your approval excluded that building. My contention prior to the litigation and how we got to where we are today was that was previously a parking lot. It was paved when I worked there as a 16-year-old for the Vercruzzi Farm Market, and always had been. It doesn't negate the fact that I still have to ask you permission to use that as a parking lot. Further, it was discussed and it was brought up in Labella comments about well exceeding the required parking for a business in that area or a hospitality type business that we have around double the parking. Approximately 3 days a week, all year round, we completely max out our parking lot. That includes that stone lot on Titus Avenue. And during the summer, it's 5 days a week. Every day, unless it's raining out, that parking lot exceeds its capacity. We have, there's 42 employees of the brewery, of which we typically have about 15 on site at a time. So that is primarily where we park so that we are allowing the customers to have the best parking spots or the closest and safest parking spots to the brewery itself. Bear with me, I lost my note real quick. The number of residential units, again, was discussed and debated with the Director of Development at the time, Carrie Ivers. And when we had changed it to 14 apartments, we did so to preserve some large, very mature trees and to make the development not too crammed in. We would have had to push the units closer together and make a number of other changes, and we did do that. Drawings were submitted to the town for that change, showing 14 drawings. That drawing was subsequently signed by Carrie Ivers. It was signed by John Nitty. It was signed by Fire Marshal George and returned to us. So from our end, we didn't just unilaterally build 14 apartments when we had approval to build 20. We consciously looked at the site and as it developed, did the responsible thing of keeping it and making it very attractive. We do have intentions of coming back to you to build further apartments, in fact 8 more units at the end of Lorraine Drive on the west side of the road, adjoining that parking lot that we were discussing before. Sorry, I lost my little note again. The parking lot down, there's a small parking area that is inside the Brookside Cottage development. The town had requested, specifically DPW, Aaron then was deputy commissioner, had requested that we have a pull-off for the town for when they service the sanitary sewage pump. We had done that. We had the lay of the land lent itself to design it, to lay it out the way we did. It actually comes in especially useful because we don't allow parking on the road for the cottages, so that gives a little bit for a guest parking, but it's 4 parking spots. And that's located right at the pump station in the southernmost part of the developed part of the property. So anyway, that's how we got here. I wanted everybody to have background from both sides of this, so that I did bring the sign drawing showing the 14 cottages with me. I did bring the fire marshal approval letter from that was addressed to the planning board, that from my understanding, the planning board never received, documenting that the road is okay as a dead end on both directions, and that the fire trucks can turn around, and that the St. Paul Fire Department was perfectly comfortable with it. And again, I'd certainly be open to any questions you may have on any of that.
So that last comment then addresses 2B and C, is that correct?
Not exactly. The town has asked their current fire marshal.
So what were you telling me then?
Okay, I have a letter addressed to the planning board from Fire Marshal Bill Durland. It's dated May of 2023. That gave a
What does that have to do with this, though?
It has to do with the fact that the wall, that really not in the purview of your decision. It doesn't come into it because that was negated, but it was, you were asking me about the fire marshal approval.
Well,
So,
2 I-squared undertakings, B would be 7 days, 7 business days from the signing of this agreement, which was in April 7th and 8th, that the fire marshal would have issued that a lockbox would be put on that gate, and that the fire marshal would have agreed that that took place, that was acceptable. That's the letter you're referring to right now?
No, I'm not. I'm
Okay,
referring
so
to.
has that been done?
Yes. Yes, we met with with Bill Lang. I don't remember the name of the new fire marshal, but Bill had already been promoted to Director of Development at that time, and the fire chief from St. Paul all met with me over there, reviewed the locking mechanism, or removing the locking, proof that we removed the locking mechanism from the man gate. Instead of installing the key box, we took the lock off it altogether.
So
And-
has that been satisfied?
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, everything on the agreement has been satisfied with the exception of the planning board, and subsequently it'll be a town board approval for the outdoor seating because it's a special use permit.
so you're saying that a previous fire marshal had inspected the property and at a time in the past had said that you were compliant with any fire marshal concerns?
Yes,
Okay,
twice.
twice.
Fire Marshal George did prior to them issuing the C of Os, which started to roll out in 2021, and then, but it wasn't well documented.
Okay,
And then, at the direction of Supervisor Fitzpatrick, Fire Marshal Bill Durland went back out and he wrote a 4-page letter plus another 4 pages of color photographs, addressed it to the planning board. I later found out that, at least according to Supervisor Evans, that never made it to the planning board. And I can't begin to explain the reason for that, but I have a copy of it and would gladly share one with you if you'd like.
Yeah, I don't think either one
It
of those
doesn't pertain
documents
to
that
the
you
settlement.
described were ever
But
shared with this board.
as far as the settlement is concerned, those components have been satisfied, you're saying?
Yes.
So, Mr. Nolan, could you walk us through your maps and just tell us what we should concentrate on, so that what you're looking for, so that, I think you touched on everything that Eric said was in scope.
Yeah.
So,
If we can go through it on the drawing that I submitted,
yeah, we have one marked as built, which is, what number is this, Michelle?
Mike, I marked the newest one as built for them
C3, it says
to
C3.
defer from. That
Okay.
shows the parking lot on Titus Avenue,
yes,
the 4 spaces on the back.
yes. This one shows received February 14th, 2024, but I think you have one that's slightly more current than that, but I think for what we're talking about, it's probably the same. I don't believe anything was changed in that, but
The date on this was 10/6/22, the received date
Yeah.
was February 22.
yes, that's,
There.
yes, that has all the elements we're talking about in it, I believe. So starting from working north to south, if you will, or left, I guess if you're holding the drawing upright, it would be right to left. So the first, just off of Titus Avenue, that first parking lot, there is looking to seek your approval for. Whether there is a grassy area in front of it, double grassy area, straddle the sidewalk, and then another wider grassy area behind, just behind that, because there's a little bit of an elevation change. So that would be that parking lot again that was originally addressed as Building 6, and a little bit contrary to the allegations of the town, that was never approved as a building, but it wasn't approved as anything, and therefore I'm seeking your approval for it to be a parking lot. Going down the list that I misplaced already.
So is there going to be a road straight down through or not? That's what I was.
No.
No, okay.
Nope, that's permanently blocked off. It's too steep an elevation change. There's about a 5-foot drop off behind that wall, and does not go straight through. So the seating is in an L format, like it's shown there. The seating, if you see the little rectangular boxes at the straight ahead on the roadway when you go in, those are the planter boxes separating off the patron area versus the entranceway.
I got it. So I just want to ask Eric. So Eric, the wall's not in question here, right? Because it wasn't one of the elements you called out.
Correct. So that that was one of the issues in the lawsuit, but the resolution to that was the removal of the lock. There's a man gate at the top of the wall,
Okay.
and so in order to allow access from the parking lot into this driveway, the compromise was remove the lock from that doorway, and so that's what I think was just being discussed.
Oh, okay. So
There
that's
you
where
go.
the gate is you're talking about on
Yes.
that wall. Okay.
Yeah, it's a man gate. The fire department, if there's ever a really large or need to have multiple fire trucks in there at the same time, which is extremely unlikely given the size of the units, but if that was, they wanted to be able to access it and pull a hose from the second fire hydrant, there's one in the entrance on Lorraine Drive that would be their primary, but there's also one somewhere around the Titus Mower area that would, they could pull a second line in, and wanted to make that as easy as possible in the event it was needed.
So everything north, and then it's the parking lot, the outdoor seating, the gate.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Is there anything else up that area, or is it?
I don't think the gate came into your end of things. I think that was just on the fire marshal, but it was addressed in the resolution, or in the,
Well, the gate pertains to the wall. We don't have to talk about the wall because
Right.
that's all resolved.
Correct.
Right. So that's
Right.
good.
so the parking lot in front there, the outdoor seating is located there. If we go to the far back, almost close to the circle where the turnaround in Lorraine Drive is, you see our pump station is those two small circles. That's a sanitary sewer pump station, and it pumps the sewer water up to Lorraine Drive because we're much, 15 feet below Lorraine Drive in that area, and it pumps it up there into the town sewer system. The part of that comes into play for you is the way we set up the pull-off there, and to utilize that in 4 parking spots back there. And it should be noted that each apartment has one parking for one. So there's 14 apartments and 14 one-car driveways. This is the only parking lot that goes, or parking area that goes beyond that.
Have there been any changes to the area that's marked concrete patio? Used to be parking. Is the material that's at the floor the same or different?
It's currently the same, but that is part of our approval is with the, when we submit the drawing to the town, just showing the actual seating area there. We showed it removing the curb because it makes handicap accessibility easier. You can currently go up the ramp across from the sidewalk that goes right up and then turn left in to get into inside. But then you're stuck on one side or the other of that curb. So we want to eliminate the curb and make one flat surface across there and ultimately get rid of the look of it being a parking spot.
Sitting on top of the parking spots, yes.
What was the deviation on the landscaping plan, if any?
I'm not aware of any. Labella didn't cite any in their initial review of the
Is
site.
that something that we can get a copy of, is a landscaping plan?
I mean, that is not one of the issues that's before the planning board right now. That wasn't one of the issues that was raised in the complaint, and that is
So there was no,
settlement agreement.
all right, so,
As far as I'm aware, not to say that there wasn't, but I'm not aware of any, or at least no effort by the town to enforce any sort of deviation with respect to the landscaping plan.
Yeah, I'm not aware of any either, Alan. I don't know that we talked about, because we didn't really talk about developing that front parking lot much because we kind of left it out of the application process. So that
so what would be your intention of that front parking lot with landscaping? It's required.
Right, yes. We installed trees there already, a number of trees, and there is a sidewalk that is intended to connect the Titus Avenue sidewalk to our sidewalks that are deeper into your plan. I can go back to my drawing, sorry. And that is in a landscaped area that currently we just put grass seed down to keep the dust down from the dirt. But that would be the sidewalk section, if you again start at Titus Avenue, and where you see that first handicap ramp there, crossing that parking lot, and the other two handicap ramps going up and down to get into heading toward the entrance of the brewery. Those sidewalks have not been installed as of yet, nor has the parking lot been paved yet. But those are intended to be grassy areas on both sides of that, or landscape or gardened areas on both sides of that.
Okay. And a question to council, for these areas that he's seeking approval for, we can treat them as site plan review?
Correct. You can impose any sort of reasonable conditions or requirements that the board agrees on.
So I got
And
a question. Oh, go ahead.
One last question. The outdoor seating, we're not approving one way or another because that's a special use permit. We may be asked to comment on that in the future if the town board so requires from us.
Correct, and I believe the town board is going to refer that.
Yes,
To
I
this
heard the
board?
same.
So I think it will ultimately be put before you.
Kay Powers Labella. I'll also note that when talking with Town Board's counsel, that when they refer special use permits, they will like substantive comments from the board, so not necessarily a binary yes or no, but if you have other,
Yeah, I think we've been doing that as
yeah.
of late. Yeah.
So, Mr. Nolan, the parking lot, since you've put the stones down and everything, just for the future, if you're going to pave that, any concerns you saw or you've asked anybody regarding drainage or any of those?
No, it already had kind of a natural drainage path to it from when it was a fruit stand. And that essentially aligns, there's a grassy area directly behind that any runoff would flow to. From there going backwards toward the back of the lot is all pervious, so it's ideal conditions to accept rainwater runoff and not create puddling or erosion.
And nothing's happened to the right, no erosion to the right
No.
towards Titus Moore?
No, I have not seen any at all. We've completely seeded that, grassed it, and it's mowable even after rain, so it's taken the water on pretty well.
And going back to the concrete patio, that hasn't caused any drainage issues, anything?
No, it is partly pervious, which we'll lose a little piece of that pervious where the parking spots that Mr. Huber and I were talking about with that we would, in order to level that out, that would make that impervious, but there's still a huge, vast pervious parking lot to accept that water, and it won't generate any more. We're already way under, however you word it, but the coverage of our property is very favorable.
Okay. Any other questions?
No, but I'd like to see a detailed lighting and landscaping plan on the parking lot.
Right, the lighting wouldn't change from what it is today. We already have.
That's great, just show it to me, that's all I need.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
I think you've seen it in the past, but I'll get you. I'll pull one out from the old copy because I think we did a full, whatever you call that, the lighting plan.
I think, like, item D, the Lorraine Drive curb cut, I remember, what you said seems to be what I remember as well.
I can show you the minute. I did bring the minutes. I didn't bring copies for everybody, but I do have that in my.
I remember the curb cut, and I thought that there was a condition that it was to be blocked off along the lines of what you said. So, for me personally, I think it seems like the time and place to remove that condition has come, and that we should allow the curb cut on Lorraine Drive and remove the condition to block that off. I don't know what others feel.
I have no issue with that. Actually, I don't have any issue with any of the requests. I'm going to just put it out there. I see what goes on there. I think they need the parking. It's something we should do. I didn't know about the cottages that you reduced the number, but if that works and it makes your numbers, that's fine. So,
It was the right thing to do, and it's very comfortable back there. If any of you have the opportunity to take a ride through there, it's beautiful. They're fully occupied, and we have a little bit of a waiting list for others to come join it. So I think we hit the aesthetic points the way it was relayed out. We did feel at one point that we were trying to cram too much in, and it goes back one step further or older when the original brewery expansion was going to be much smaller than it currently is. That's what drove, and I came back to you, we eliminated the common building that was going to be between the two and expanded the brewery footprint. And that's where all our elevation issues started to arise from, because it was a much longer building going down the hill.
okay. Any other questions? I was going to ask Labella to talk to their part.
I mean, I think with the 14 units, it reduces the impact overall. When you talk about losing some of the pervious pavement up top, you're obviously gonna have more green space down below,
Yes.
so that's nice. I mean, kind of comparing the old site plan where we had the building in front there, that was gonna occupy a much bigger space even than the parking lot that we've got. So again, that's a little bit of a smaller impact than what would have been if we fully built it out. So I like that too.
Right, and if you guys have the opportunity to, because it will be a coming application coming your way over the next few months, and we wanted to resolve this first, of course, get the lawyers out of it. Sorry, Eric. But the
You get all kinds of love tonight.
we're good. But at the end of Lorraine Drive, there is the area to build the remaining 4 more duplexes, and I think it will really add aesthetically to the whole Brookside Cottage model. If you go down Lorraine Drive, it's not on this plan. I think you're cut off from it. It'd be further west from this plan. Yes, it would be on the other side of Lorraine Drive, so right over on the back right from there. But right by the circle by your left thumb. Yes, right above you. It's south of the parking lot, and we're actually looking at removing a little bit of that parking lot to accommodate, so we can put 4 there, or 4 duplexes there versus 3.
Okay, so before we get to the future, so at one point in
Yes,
time,
sorry.
you were going to, or I think your plans were, maybe I'm mistaken here, to acquire all the properties on Lorraine Drive. That's no longer the case, or?
It's still a hope. There's one that doesn't really come into our plan. I think it's number 93, doesn't really play into it. We've adjusted all our plans south. We have a good relation with all three people, but with the real estate market being very difficult for them to acquire another place, the one couple wants to stay in Arundecoit, and they've been unable to find something, but I assume someday we'll buy them. I can't promise a date or even the guarantee that it will ever happen, but I would be hopeful to. We'd like
Which
to
one
have
is
them.
number 93? I'm sorry.
The 93 is the single one would be on the north side of the parking lot on Lorraine.
You have this
Probably
in your,
this one.
you guys should have a copy like this in your packet.
Yep.
And if you look north of the Lorraine Drive parking area is number 93.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That's the only one that's
Gotcha.
probably the least likely. He's expressed an interest to be there for a long time, and so that would be unlikely. The other two on the opposite side of the road, we own the house in between them, or the property in between the two, but ideally, we'd love to see that whole area be a Brookside little, senior village. And, kind of a side note or a cool thing that has come from this is as these people move in, we've also vacated and made available, out of the 14 apartments that are rented, 9 of them sold their homes in Arundecoit. Did very well selling them, but it allows us to bring more families in that end to utilize those spaces and downsize and stay in town.
I think the biggest thing that's jumping out to me, I mean, at this point, the only thing that's really jumping out is, I think that the board was, at the time, hesitant to allow a parking lot against Titus Avenue because of the MUC guidelines. I don't necessarily think that people didn't need the parking, or that it wasn't reasonable, or that it maybe didn't make sense, but putting a parking lot against Titus Avenue was not in chorus with the MUC guidelines. And that's why people wanted a building there, at least personally speaking, that was it for me. And we, like you said, didn't really approve or deny anything for that. We sort of set it aside and we're like, when you're ready, come back and we'll go from there. Here we are now. So I think that what might be reasonable is to make sure that we do some heavy screening along the front of that parking lot, which is the same or similar that we've required on a number of properties in there, particularly the Chase Bank has like a faux wrought iron fence and some inkberry bushes there, and that's been pretty common thing that we've been asking when we get sort of pushed into having some parking lot up against the street.
Right.
So, do you think that there might be any opportunities to do something substantial to screen that?
I guess a definition of substantial is the gray area. It's a farm, and one of the things we've always tried to preserve in the look of that property is a farm, which has a depth of field to it that you see different things as you look back. And the cool thing about that property looking in from Titus is you look beyond the cars, but there's beautiful trees out front and that, but the brewery building itself is just a really cool space, and the whole reason we preserve that building. But the wall, and then above it you see the kind of the skyline of the senior living apartments, and it still has that farm feel. So I hate to dress it up so much with flowers that it loses that farm appeal. But somewhere in between here and there,
Right.
I'm not against planning. I'm not going to say I'm not planning
gonna
anything.
suggest a wall or something like that. My suggestion would be is something that is green in the summer and green in the winter, but also something that provides structure. That the Chase Bank, they were going to plant those inkberries, and they have had mild success with those. But with the fence being there, even if the shrubbery doesn't take off, we still have something that screens. So, perhaps split rail fence could, go with your farm aesthetic and still kind of provide that buffer that I think would be consistent with the guidelines and consistent with what we've asked other folks to do in the same area. But I'm not sure of an application that's come before us that has had parking, even existing, Chase had existing parking up against the street, and we asked them to come in alignment with the MUC guidelines. So, I mean, of all these things, that's the one that's really kind of jumping out at me. I mean, like I said, it wouldn't have been my preference to have parking at all along Titus. So I think that, considering the guidelines, that's fair.
I would support that also.
Including like fence-like, or can I do
Yeah,
a little more in
fence.
landscaping? 'Cause I mean, split rail doesn't add much of a.
You're not going to
visual.
get much planting in there is a problem because you're so close to the sidewalk with the curb.
There's almost 10 feet though. I mean, we get a little bit of, we do
Between the
have
fence and the,
between the
sidewalk
sidewalk
and the curb?
curb, yes.
is
I
that-
don't have the exact number, but actually, if Michelle has the drawing, might be able to estimate how wide do you think that grassy area, sidewalk to the curb of the parking? Any guesstimate? I think it's about 10. We mow it and it takes more than one pass, but,
I'd have to look.
yeah, no, okay.
Kate Powers Labella, I'll just say as a reference, usually parking spaces are 9 by 18.
Yeah.
So what I would do is I would look at the short end of a parking space, that's about 9 feet.
For a scale. Yeah, so we do have a little bit of room where we could do a little bit more, but I'm not completely opposed to split rail because it does fit in the farm-ish feel, especially if it's painted white or something versus, and
I mean, you could come up with any number of ideas. I think the important, from the experience I've had with this screening, is people plant things with really good intention, and then the salt gets to them, and then they don't get watered, and so we like that. But the having at least something of some structure really kind of ensures that there's some durability to the planting. And we've asked for that even down on Ridge Road and stuff like that, and they're not in the muck. So I don't know.
I would like to see it. I don't,
and these guys you both agree to that?
I agree with Brad, I think the black wrought iron would be a nice touch, and, even if you did like, a couple decorative columns that match, brick columns that match the exterior of the brewery, I think that would kind of close that area in nicely.
I can go either way, so.
All right. Let me play around with some ideas. If I could get Michelle something that she can get you before next week. We are hoping to get a decision next week so that we can, done with Eric over there. He's chasing me hard. But anyway, this is the last step to accomplish that. That and town board will go into the special use permit would be the ultimately last thing.
Any other questions for Mr. Nolan before yeah, go ahead.
Just one more,
John, could you just make sure that mic is on? I'm sorry. Press and hold.
John?
I think so. Just one comment, which I'm sure the town board will get into with the special use permit for the outdoor seating area. My only thing is just vehicle protection elements there. I know you got those wooden planter boxes, but if you could find ways to put in something a little more permanent, just because, you have that main driveway coming right in off Titus that goes straight into that area. That's about it on my end.
Okay.
It was a similar thing when Roosters came. They put a patio out front, and we asked them, it was the same that I'm not saying you have to do the same thing, but it was a similar
little more.
concern that we had down there. I think it turned out much better too. It feels much safer. Kids running in and out, and at least the driver has some predictability where somebody might shoot out.
Yeah. Do that there, yeah. All right, I will look at that and get you a response this week and figure out, because we did at one point want to put something more permanent, but the ability to move them for cleaning and blowing off and straightening out, and big deliveries of brewing equipment, not putting it permanent, but those could bolt down. We have different options.
Yeah, and I don't think we need like a wall or anything, but I know sometimes they sell like these decorative planter boxes which have like a bollard in it, and you could space them 3 feet, 4 feet,
Right.
for cars with.
Well, the planters are plenty sturdy. They're just not bolted down. They're heavy iron. They're 300 and some pounds apiece. But then they have a foot that I believe I can bolt down. We hadn't done it because we had moved them around during COVID, but I can absolutely address that.
How does a similar thing than Langers came? They put a patio out front, and we asked them, it was the same that I mean, I don't know
No, no.
Okay.
No, the sign is out. We put it out whenever last.
The 10th. It had to be on.
So if
It
there's
was.
no other questions for Mr. Nola, I was going to have, Kate, could you please go over the Labella letter, just so everybody?
Sure. It just got sent out today, so I understand that the board and the applicant, et cetera, likely didn't have sufficient time to go through, but I'll just give you a summary, something to think about before the hearing next week. So first, just generally, there are a lot of disclaimers in this comment letter, just because obviously it's not a full site plan review. And so Labella just wanted to make it clear that we did not review this site plan as your town engineer. And that additionally for item 5, or comment 5, it may be a good idea to include some language on the site plan that is eventually signed by the chair, should this move forward, just indicating that this is a limited scope of review and that it was not reviewed in the same way as the typical standard site plan. So comment 1, A through E, I wanted to ensure that the majority of our comments are applicable to what is within your purview and what is outlined in the settlement. And so item A is the number of residential units. Again, really what we would be looking at is drainage, stormwater, grading, et cetera. But it seems that the board has already sort of discussed the number of units, at least, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems that the reduced number is likely a positive versus the larger number that was there previously. B is number of residential parking spots. And so in terms of what is adjacent to Lorraine Drive, we don't have any opposition of its existence. Again, we did not review the dimensions of this, the installation of it, drainage, et cetera. So ultimately, we will defer to you all, but I would also defer to Commissioner of Public Works as well, since this appears to be something that was discussed between the applicant and DPW. Item C. So similar to what has been discussed, that obviously the presence of a structure, a mixed-use building, right along the roadway and the streetscape is different than a parking lot. And so sort of as a compromise, as the group has sort of been discussing, of having some sort of screening, I put here either doing landscape islands. I was a little bit concerned about the width that's there, but I believe, if the applicant can prove that a sufficient, volume of shrubbery and other plantings plus potentially a fence can fit in that 10 feet, we don't have any, we don't oppose that, but just gave a couple of other options there. D, the curb cut on the west side of Lorraine Drive. We had written, the board may want to consider additional commercial traffic on Lorraine Drive since that comes from a commercial site. However, it appears that board members have indicated that this was previously discussed and that there were previous conditions and that at a certain point it would be open again. So obviously defer to you all on whether you think that's appropriate or not. And then E, we have outdoor seating. As I had just said previously, ultimately the town board makes that decision, but they will look to you all for suggestions for obviously approval or denial, but also if there's any conditions. I also noted, similar to John, that may want to include bollards or something like that, just have that protection between the seated patrons and vehicle circulation on site. Item 2, fire access. Obviously you read it in the settlement, but I just wanted to include that of it's not within the purview of this group, which you all understand now that we've sort of been talking about it, but rather it's within the purview of the fire marshal. And then just obviously wanting a signature block, so once the drawings are to the board standards, that then they can ultimately be signed off by the chair. And that's about it. If you have any questions, let me know.
Any questions on Labella's comments? Any questions at all? Look like you have one.
I know this is as-built, but did the actual brewery change? Everything was built the same, like the footprint?
Now, the brewery has stayed the same as what was approved. We originally had a smaller design, and we came back to planning board and expanded it once we saw the size of the brewing equipment. But no, it was built exactly per what was approved and drawn.
What's your seating inside?
About 100. I think it's 104 inside.
I was going to ask Eric if he had anything you wanted to add based on the conversation.
No, I think everything's been covered. Everyone seems to have a good grasp about what we're looking at. I'll be at the meeting next week, so if any questions come up between now and then, be happy to answer those. But otherwise, I think we're on the right track.
Michelle, as per Brad asked, could you recap? Or, I'm sorry, Mr. Nolan, anything else?
No, I'm good.
Nope. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So all right. So asking, so let's see, terms from the town that the I-Square came back to the planning board. So this starts with Eric starting. The planning board purview should just be related to the items listed within the agreement. The curb cut on Lorraine Drive was part of a previously approved site plan. The number of residential units was discussed and debated with the prior director. Drawings were signed off on for the current number of units by Ivers and Nitty. 4-space parking lot requested for a pull-off by the deputy commissioner for the sewer. This will also be used as guest parking. Met with Bill Lang and reviewed the locking mechanism and took the lock off altogether. Allowing the 14 units helps to decrease the impacts on the site. And then I included in here asking for approval, number 1, proposed parking lot on northeast corner instead of building number 6. Trees have been installed near the proposed parking area. 4 parking spaces to be installed in front of the pump station.
That's the already addressed earlier in your comments. That's the 4 parking spaces are the ones that, when you said that Aaron McGee had requested, those are
Right, by the
those are
sewer.
the same.
From the sewer.
Yes.
Okay. Patio is partially pervious that accepts the water runoff? Did I?
Not, and no longer going to be.
Okay.
Because there currently look like parking spots in part of the seating area, and we were planning to resurface that. And
The proposal now as part of the new approval is
Yes.
to make this concrete, right?
yes, concrete in one level versus stepping up onto the curb.
Okay. Would like to see a detailed lighting and landscaping plan. Please submit. Remove the condition of blocking off the Lorraine Drive parking lot. Install heavy screening or a split rail black wrought iron fencing along the north side of the parking lot. Find a way to put in something a little more permanent in and around the outdoor seating area. Include some language on the site plan regarding the scope of the review. Should this move forward, look to the planning board for suggestions regarding the outdoor seating, regarding the special use permit. Include Ballard, I'm repeating myself, include Ballard because it kept going back and forth. So include Ballard or something of the like for protection for the outdoor seating. Depict on the site plan a signature block for final signatures. Any,
The only thing I might add is the Conservation Board has new landscape guidelines, so we're encouraging everybody to take a look at those when they're doing planting, makes everything a lot smoother.
And there's no seeker with this, right?
I don't believe so.
I have to think on that. because just now that I'm thinking about the original seeker for this, there is different configuration, different number of units, so it may have to be amended. I'll bring, whatever we need for seeker, I'll bring next week.
Okay, he did provide a short form, so
Okay.
if you could clarify where it falls to. Besides that, I think that's it. Look
Thank
forward
you,
to seeing
guys.
at
I
the next
appreciate your
meeting.
time.
Thanks.
It will be here.
And we look forward to seeing you too, Eric.
Thank you. Not a lot of people do.
So this next item is, this is the revised agenda that was originally sent out. The application for 2590 Culver Road has asked to be put back on it for sketch plan conference. It's case number PB 2024-05-06, request by Colliers Engineering and Design, acting as agent for Providence Housing, for sketch plan conference for the proposed construction of 4 multifamily apartment buildings totaling 104 units with site-related improvements on premises 2590 Culver Road in an R5 residential district.
So I'm sorry, so this is sketch plan?
Yes, this is for sketch plan. Originally, it was on for the E-Pods, but they wanted to come back to review it in regards to, they did go to the Conservation Board, and the Conservation Board had asked them to do a tree inventory study. And they don't think that they will be able to accomplish that in enough time by next Monday. So they asked to move it back to sketch plan to re-review.
Thank you. Okay. Do you have these, Michelle?
So the colored renderings or the pictures are just one of each building type. So just to share, and then the floor plans are one of each. Same thing with the
There's only
elevations
2
and
pages, right?
Correct. And then you
Okay.
have a longer one coming your way down here.
You can announce your names before you start and address. Do we have to do that for the workshop?
Justin Latier, Colliers Engineering Design, 280 East Broad Street.
Robert Kane, CSD Housing.
Jessica Wade, SWBR.
Joe Gibbons, SWBR. Yeah, so we just wanted to get back with everybody here. We've made some changes to the site plan based on our last meeting. We have revised the building layout to better avoid the ravine in the center of the site, and to stay away from the woodlot EPOD area. We've also addressed all the comments from the prior sketch plan meeting. Just wanted to get this back to everybody before we proceed with further site plans. We did have a positive meeting with the Conservation Board earlier this month. They noted that the steep slope EPODs would not be an issue, and we are working on a tree survey to address the woodlot EPOD. And then we will be adjusting as needed to maintain as many existing trees that we can on site.
Can you explain better how the new layout better accommodates the EPOD?
Yeah, so the predominant area where you've got your existing wooded area on site is that lower southeast corner. So what we did is we moved as much as we could to the west, away from that lower corner, to minimize that disturbance. And then the other thing that was driving that change was due to the soil conditions on site, we did want to try to keep the buildings away from that center swath where the existing ravine used to be.
which house on the map is 968? I mean, I see what you're saying, but do you have a map with this on top of that?
Is that that's the steep slope.
Okay.
So the woodlot one is shown.
This one?
Yep. So that is right.
Oh, I see, okay. I mean, you're still really in it, by quite a bit, wouldn't you say?
I mean, that's a fair statement.
What did the conservation board say, tree in?
Yeah, so they had noted that there was some tree species out there they would like to see saved. So they had requested a tree survey and then had noted that, anything that could not be saved would need to be replaced at a 1-to-1 ratio. They did also mention the revised landscape guidelines as well that you had mentioned prior. So they didn't seem to be, not that that applies to you folks here, didn't seem to be too concerned with that with the EPOD area.
If I remember correct from the first sketch plan review, however
Yes.
long ago, the three-story building, that wasn't,
That was not, so that is a new,
it's all new, okay.
yep, so in order to shift things around, we did move to the 3-story building. That does increase the unit count on site a little bit. We go from 95 units to 104.
I think I know the answer, but I'm gonna ask it anyway. On the south side, the two three-bedroom units buildings to the west, any way the orientation of that could be shifted to kind of mirror the two on the east? So if you're, a resident on Whitlock Drive, you're not looking at, like a wall of building directly behind you?
Usually turn those 90 degrees.
Yeah, so they're,
So you've got a little bit of a gap in between them.
yeah, just so you're, like, if you're one of the residents there, you're not gonna have, two or three houses that are looking, at one
Yeah,
continuous.
so we are looking to try to keep the building as much as we can out of that existing ravine area due to environmental and soil concerns within there. And as well as preserve that center area for both stormwater, likely a bioretention area, and landscaping and plantings.
On the previous plan, we talked a little bit about land bank parking, but there was some thought, you're trying to meet minimum parking requirements, I
Yeah.
believe, which I think there was a thought by folks that maybe there was too much parking and there was the opportunity to land bank, especially considering the EPOD here, if we're able to do that. I don't know if that would require a variance or something like that, but I mean, if there is an opportunity to reduce the number of parking spots in order to impact the EPOD to a smaller extent, that might be worth looking into.
Yes, yeah, so we did, I don't know the exact count, we did increase the number of land bank spots with this change. Now, because the unit count went up, didn't change those additional spots for those units came as land bank spots versus paved spots.
Very sorry to interrupt. The tables with handheld microphones, please bring them forward a little bit. They're the only ones not catching us.
Oh, it is on, okay.
Does this need any variances, do you know?
So the 3-story building is going to be 36 feet, which I believe exceeds the code requirement of 30, so that will need a variance for height.
It's a large building.
Are these for sale or for rent? I can't remember. For rent?
Yeah, and I think with the building height, the precedence next door, I believe that also had a 6-foot variance in height, so we felt it was appropriate and kind of in line with the neighboring property that was done by RMI. Not only that, but it's pushed further away from the residential neighborhood, so it gives you a nice density scale downward from 104 all the way down to the neighborhood. So the eighplexes would be more residential in nature. Then you have your higher density residential more to the north, away from residents. From a land use planning perspective, it's kind of cohesive with the commercial activity along Culver Road there. So, you know, we saw a lot of benefits to proposing a larger building type on the north end while minimizing environmental and neighborhood impact.
Could you review again why you couldn't turn those buildings?
So in the middle, you'll see a contour lines. That's an old ravine. In the middle of the ravine, it was an old landfill that was used for a lot of asphalt, so environmentally hazardous materials. Soils conditions not suitable for slab-on-grade construction, thus requiring deep foundation design and really increasing the cost to points of, you know, not making sense. So on the west side, you see buildings that are more horizontal with the rectangular shape of the parcel, largely in part because of the ravine. On the north, then you have the ravine kind of contouring north and up and down and over the hill. So there you have the kind of reorientation of the building types. But again, along the property line, it will be very well screened, robust landscaping along the entire perimeter, and also preserving a lot of the wooded areas that's currently existing there. So, you know, as Justin mentioned, we went to the Conservation Board, and it was, I think it was generally well received, from the building orientations to working with the environmental constraints to, you know, the scaling of the density on the site to really offer something that's more economical here.
So for those two buildings, I think what you're telling me is you're going to fill it in anyways, but you can't fill it to the point where you can build on it, is what you're saying. Is that what I heard? Or it's too expensive?
Yeah, so, you know, on eightplex buildings, I don't think you ever see a deep foundation design. So, you know, no one does it in construction. You have more deep foundation designs and longer building types to really get down to the bedrock so the buildings don't, you know, cave over time. So we're really trying to stay away from the ravine as a result of the soils exploration that we've been doing.
You were mentioning something about the comparison of the height on this building compared to the neighboring property. I missed exactly what you said.
Yeah, so Colliers, formerly Bergman Associates, did the property just to the east. And correct me if I'm wrong, Justin, that was about a 36-foot building height, where the only variance required for that property was the building height. And so we thought it was in harmony with, you know, the building next door, using it as a precedence for a variance on this one here.
So the building height in comparison to the Providence Housing Project will be the same, taller, slightly shorter?
It's roughly the same. We use that, like I said, as a precedent. We worked on that project as well, so we didn't try to exceed that amount, and we want to make it feel like it's one big community.
Get a visual.
Yes.
I'm familiar with that building.
Yep.
How tall it is.
Yeah, yep.
Do you intend on having entrances on the south side?
No, the main entrance. No, the entrance will be on the west side where the signalized light is at Quickly's. It's a,
I'm sorry, people entering their units?
there'll be patio sitting space. So the rears typically will mirror the fronts. So you have like a nice residential feel on the rear part of the buildings where people will be able to sit outside and enjoy the weather when it's nice.
Yeah, I think the two buildings to the east do currently show entrances on that south side, whereas the two that are rotated 90 have the entrances on the west and the east side.
And the main building's main entry is on the south side, the parking lot side.
See, that part I like about. I don't particularly care for the entrances coming off, from the south side, but I like the narrower edge of the building there.
Yep.
So it's kind of a,
It's a trade-off.
yeah, it's a trade-off which one.
This boulevard looking area in between there, what is that?
So that's where we're likely going to be putting our stormwater retention, our bioretention for quality treatment, as well as some nice plantings. And then that'll drain all to the northeast to the stormwater pond. Yeah, so basically, we have attempted to keep everything as far north as we can, given some of the other site constraints. Again, really that existing ravine is one of the things that's really kind of driving that. We do have the plantings. We did add the fence on the plan to the south of that one parking lot as requested at the last meeting. The existing soil conditions.
If I recall correctly as well, we're exceeding the minimum setback requirement for the south side of it, as well as the landscaping that we'll be eventually doing over there to help screen the multifamily from the single family.
I agree with what Dan brought up. I like the fact that having those two units.
Brad, can you just move the microphone closer, please?
I like the fact that having those two units and that angle on one hand puts the facade of the building sort of on the street. But it does seem like the neighbors would really not typically in like this type of neighborhood you'd have backyard to backyard to have, so having a front entrance, in essentially what would you
In your backyard.
Yeah, no, I totally hear you. So the trade-off there is, you can visualize the buildings that run north-south and just looking at the setbacks and lining them all down the road. So the trade-off is density because it covers more site costs because site costs are so expensive, or you look at like more of a horizontal building type because it's less costly due to the soils conditions. But I think Joe and Jessica here can talk about the rear side of the horizontal facing building. And truly, whenever we do townhouse-style developments, the fronts look like the rears, and they're very beautiful. So you guys can talk a little bit more about those.
Yeah, so there really would be just a few doors on the south sides of those buildings, I believe. And the lighting would be very low, only at the entrances. So we could look at some other buffering options along those sides of the buildings if we needed to.
Is there any way to move the interior design so you can enter off the east or west sides?
We could look at that. Sure. Yeah, it could be an option.
Because you're just flipping your
Yeah.
unit around.
Yep, if we need to move it around so it's not facing the south,
Building itself.
we could look at that. Sure, yep.
these residents on the street have really been through a lot of change in their backyard, a lot.
Yeah, we understand.
Yeah,
If there's anything that we can do to minimize this, and many of them have been, have had, basically woods in their backyard for a long time, and it was designated an EPOD, so there may have been some sense of security.
Right.
Understood.
You expect that the school bus or other types of public transportation will come on site? I suppose I'm referencing the school bus. I don't think that the RTS would.
Yeah, I think so, and we did add a bus shelter on the plans to accommodate that. And did verify that this layout will accommodate them coming in and back out of the site, as discussed at the last meeting.
And residents who are taking public transportation will have access to Culver Road with a dedicated sidewalk.
Yes, I believe so, yes, yep. Yep.
Is there any bicycle storage?
Yeah, we'll be evaluating in our coming internal design team meetings on a green building program. So oftentimes that looks like it's LEED Gold +0 or it's Enterprise Green Communities Plus. With those green building certification programs does come interior bicycle storage. LEED Gold +0 does have a 1-to-1 bicycle storage requirement. Enterprise Green Communities, I forget what it is off the top of my head, but it's it's in comparison to other developments, it's pretty generous.
We currently show right now a bike storage on the front side, but once we know the scale of that, that might be adjusted a little bit, but we do have one right now on the first floor.
Brad, can you just double check your mic? It's not on.
Trouble again.
No, it's at the bottom.
Nobody's watching me, right?
You can use this one too.
Well, I'm the only one who's talking.
So are you looking for input on the design tonight? What were you looking for?
Those are just images of a similar project, but you can, if you want to change the boards, we do have a front elevation rendering of the main building. So the 8-plex pictures you have would be a similar palette to these, to the main building, sorry.
Would you be able to bring in actual samples?
I have some of the siding colors. I know, it's hard to tell.
When we did the Providence one, it really looked blue, but it kind of looks purple.
Oh, really? I still think it
Yeah,
looks
to me.
But this is more of like a deep gray for the main siding, like the horizontal and the board and batten, and then more of like a wood look cedar shake that's like the accent. The stone sample I can bring at a future meeting, and then it's just a typical charcoal
Is the stone
asphalt shingle.
like for the water line, or what's the stone doing? I don't see it from here, so.
This,
The stone's underneath the gables. They're two-story in nature.
like 2-story stone just to highlight the bump outs.
You need a microphone if you're gonna. Before you
I should
get
take it. So they're basically at the bump outs of each gable is 2-story stone, and then we're still working on if it's going to be 1 or 2 stories, but for now we're showing a 2-story stone. Here, 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 every single bump out.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you, if it's going to be 1 story, I would prefer it be the water line across the horizontal as opposed to 1 story on the vertical.
Say that again?
Good enough.
The water line on the horizontal as opposed to
Oh, okay.
1 story up on the vertical, and then you have whatever it is, hardy board or whatever you're going to have above that.
Or the option you're saying is 2 stories, stone on the bump outs, right?
Right.
Correct? Yeah.
I mean, that would give it, it would look odd to me going up 1 story, stopping, and then
So
it
how
would
it is
actually
currently-
make it look a lot richer if it were on the water line all the way across.
Point, yeah, instead of two-story, just water line all the way through.
Yeah.
At like the windowsill or just above theirs.
I do like the different use of materials in order to break up the large structure. And you have a number of gables, and pushing in and pulling out helps to break this up. So, as you move forward, I think it is a good idea to try to vary the materials.
Yeah, that's why I
Yeah.
feel like if it was all brought down, it kind of loses that richness. I really wanted the stone near the cedar shake to have that correlation between a stone and a wood look.
Yep.
And not pulling the same exact colors from right next door. So we're trying to kind of keep it. That project's pretty rich in my opinion. It's bold colors. So this is kind of a little softer but cooler. And then the main entry is a kind of like a farmhouse type of look, but a white fiber cement panel, like an Arctic white. And then we
Helps
have,
to give the impression that it's an illusion that there are 3 different buildings.
yeah, I didn't want to, it's a long run of corridor,
Ah.
so we always try to, the shift, I believe, is a 5-foot shift from the left side there to the right. So there, you could see it in the plan. We like to kind of make a main shift because to see that, 200-foot long corridor is not pleasant for tenants there, so.
How many, so this is a 72 unit, how many, just out of curiosity, were in the Providence housing?
That was 80.
Okay, so this is smaller.
Yeah, yep.
Okay.
Yeah, that was 80, I believe, all 1 bedrooms. This is 42 bedrooms and 32 1-bedrooms. So it's similar scale. It's just that one was less.
I think that one was kind of like this, right?
Yes,
And
it was
so we're
a
just
Yeah, it
seeing
was
it
a-
all in one long
Yes.
shot.
Yep.
I think something else, also think about the scaling of a larger, wider, longer building is to really think about how far away it is in proximity to where the property lines are, and how much screening there will be in between, that building, plus you have 8-plexes, plus you have, landscaping. So to visualize something off in the distance, it's harder to accomplish, but I guess there's something to be said about how far away it is from everything else, Some multifamily developments that come to my mind, they have like like a larger low-rise building in the back, or like Legends at Whitney out in Fairport, Penfield, Parrington area, where you have like a larger, building in the back, but then up front you have these smaller outbuildings. So it really helps break up the massing as well. I know a lot of people get fixated on a long-run building and they think, oh, it's massive, but it's truly based on the location of the site plan and all the buffering in between. It helps break things up as well.
One positive of that for the neighborhood is that it'll cut down on the highway noise, I would imagine, to a great extent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you just talk to me a little bit about this grass paver access drive and what that's for?
Go ahead, Justin.
Yeah, so that was something that was provided at the adjacent property. I believe it was something that when we met here last, it was requested to kind of have for the same property. Its location and path may change once we have the tree survey back. Obviously, we'll adjust that as needed to preserve as much.
Because that's going to run through what little bit of trees are over there, right?
Well, yeah, and as I said, it's flexible. We've got the room to move that to the north or to meander that a little bit more through there once we identify where the preferred ideal species of trees are that we're going to keep, and move that around to still provide that access and that path, but not unnecessarily take out good trees.
It was so a vehicle could drive on it, right?
Correct. Yes. It is for emergency access. Yes, it'll be gated at the other end, and there'll be a sidewalk for walking access to the neighboring property as well.
Is it delineated in any way? Right, because the grass paver, so the grass will grow up through it. You'll be able to still tell where you can drive and where you can't.
You should be able to.
We
yeah.
use the same type of paver at the site next door.
I remember
so
that,
you should be
along
able
the side of the building,
Yes.
right?
Yep. On the left side. Yep.
Okay.
That's where I'm almost thinking that should kind of connect, because that's here, right?
I think it was like this on this spot. It was
it
a long
on the-
time ago.
Is it on the east side or the west side?
It's on the
It's
east
on
side
the east
of
side.
the building, and it connects to whatever that road is.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Connects
Well,
to-
there's
that's a
one over
residential
there, and then
road.
we had like a stub on the west side as well. So fire access could reach
Yeah.
at least the back portion of the
That
building.
it was needed for there, though,
Yes.
so they could
Yeah, it doesn't
keep
wrap
on
all
going.
the way around, but it goes
Is this
enough.
actually still needed? Is my question.
That only serves the purpose to connect those two properties and provide that access out.
Could we do that without a driving path?
We could
Is
look at
that
that.
absolutely necessary?
I mean, if you don't want we could have just a regular sidewalk to provide
Yeah.
pedestrian
right off-
access.
Right off a culvert here, fire access, you cross fire access here.
Yeah, and he's got a turnaround in the whole thing.
Plenty of turnaround.
They might still make us provide a crash. We had to provide a crash gate on the site next door at the east side, so they might still make us put something similar if we don't extend that to the other property.
Gosh, if it's not necessary, I'd rather have the trees there.
We
Yeah.
can clarify with the fire chief to
That'd
make
be
sure if it's
their
necessary for fire
call.
code. Oftentimes, it's a certain unit count threshold tips off with cul-de-sac type developments.
Yep.
To needing two means of fire ingress and egress. So it's a matter of clarification with the fire chief. So we can
And you
always
could even
we
move
can remove
the
it.
playground a little bit or make it larger if you did that.
What are you thinking about trash collection? I see there's a dumpster for the big building. What are you gonna, are toters or?
Small.
Yeah, so we did revise, let me just flip this over,
Go ahead, Tom.
So we did revise this to add two dumpsters and change the location of them as opposed to the one that's on the plan that was submitted. So right now, kind of in line with that drive just south of the larger building, you've got the two trash enclosures instead of the one, and then up where the old one was, there's now a shed for maintenance operations.
And the dumpsters will be inclusive of the smaller units as well?
Yes, that is the intent.
Okay.
I'm sorry, could you point to where the dumpsters are gonna be
Yeah.
now? Sorry, I wasn't following. Is that where the playground is?
Is that
Sorry.
adjacent to the playground?
It is adjacent to the playground.
Well, that should be lovely for everybody, huh?
That's why we have sketch plan.
Yeah. So I would, I would really like you to reconsider that one.
We can do that. We can do that.
And also, I'm not so sure that the person that lives in this
Yeah, it's far.
unit is going to carry their trash over to there. I don't think that that's a realistic.
Okay.
My guess is they're going to leave it till it piles up and it's worth the trip, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and we can look for some other options for dumpster locations.
For the eight-plexes, totes might make sense. Do you have any comments on screening of totes for this layout here?
I feel like 6 of one and half dozen another on that, right? Because then the trash cans are over here. I mean, there are positives and negatives to that.
Yeah, and then the neighbors are going to see them, so it, or we split dumpsters.
Well, and you always have the problem of the end of the month when somebody moves out, the dumpsters are going to be overflowing, right? I mean, I don't want you to build a dumpster for the last day of the month, but you have to have that in mind.
No, I mean, to your point, too, it's a bit of a trek for the eightplexes to walk over there. It's something we definitely want to evaluate. You know, a lot of townhouses do have totes, and it's like you have a nice screening, maybe some landscaping around it to help buffer and screen it. But then finding, like, a nice location for it so it doesn't take away from the nice design of the buildings is always the challenge here.
It's always a challenge, a nice place to put garbage.
I've seen some nice garbage totes.
The one at the Memorial Art Gallery is fantastic.
Yeah.
That is,
Might be out of budget, though, so.
What are you thinking about lighting?
So everything we'll do will be dark sky compliant. It'll be a nice photometric plan. A lot of times you have the dusk till dawn building mounting lighting for the townhouse style, and then for the elevator building, I think Joe or Jessica, have you guys started thinking about on the building? I know we'll have to have some site, but go ahead, Justin.
It'll mostly, I think the majority of the light will be in the parking, just for, but on building mounted lighting, I think, yeah, we didn't even do them at the other one, so we'll have to think about that, but it wouldn't be anything, you know, like an urban setting. This would obviously be in tune with what's next door. So the only thing that might be lit is if we have a building mounted signage, but I would imagine at a site like this, we might just have a site sign. So that's another discussion I think we have to have in design. But the majority of the lighting would be within the parking lot, and then maybe small sconces at the townhouse entries.
is this project going to have a name to it?
Eventually.
You want it named after you?
No.
I saw Labella provided some comments. Do you want to go over?
Sure, I can go, Kate Powers Lavella, I can go through the comments. I will say that because the applicant is not going to be here next week, that these are not as urgent. Also, some may no longer be relevant based on how they proceed with their approvals. The major issue for Labella is seeker determination for an EPOD permit. We feel that the site plan and providing an EPOD development permit, they cannot be separated. Because obviously, well, not obviously, but if you're moving forward with the EPOD development permit, you're going to be dictating where buildings are placed, grading, all these different elements that are also part of site plan. So we do feel that if the EPOD permit and the site plan are reviewed separately, it's potentially segmentation. So the intent of seeker is to review actions as a whole and all of the potential impacts. For comment 2, we found some errors in the site capacity worksheet. You can feel free to go through those. I think that those can easily be fixed. Conservation Board, I did disseminate this letter prior to Conservation Board comments. So obviously, Labella tends to defer a lot to the Conservation Board for EPOD review as well. Just wanted to note, just so that we don't run into further issues with EPOD permits, but they're supposed to have an expiration date, so something just to think about when this comes back. And then hopefully saying that, you know, we would prefer that the EPOD development permit and the site plan be reviewed together, especially regarding seeker, that we will obtain all these additional details and plan sites, et cetera, just because as the application is presented currently, we would have some difficulties comprehensively reviewing this for a seeker determination.
Is Conservation Board here that may want to say something?
Tom's or Jack, I mean.
I'm Jack Hoffman from the Conservation Board. The applicant reviewed their program with us at our previous meeting. We wanted to defer comment until we had seen the tree inventory. But the second subject that we discussed after the applicant left was we want to make sure that there's a good spoils management program for this project. I just want to make sure we get a chance to comment for the real thing after we see the tree plan. Thank you.
Absolutely.
I'm good, Bernie.
Anybody else have any other comments? Does the applicant have any other questions for us? Did you get enough input? Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Spoils management is.
Okay, so the next item I have on the agenda is case number PB 2024-05-01, request by Bin Sun for signage approval to maintain existing building-mounted signage on premises 850 East Ridge Road in a C Business District. And I don't see him here. Do you want to?
They still have the whip sale signs up?
Sorry.
Oh, they do? I think so. They don't look, to me, they look like flimsy signs. I'm assuming
Yeah,
that's.
that's what I was gonna say.
Yeah.
I think that the current, correct me if I'm wrong, I was the question, are the current signs banners?
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that's what a whip sale sign is.
No, whip sale's like a big rod with like a, kind of like a flag. But the current signs that are up there appear to be vinyl banners. That's what my understanding, that's what I think too. So I don't know if we would want to, I mean.
Yeah, he's gonna need a better plan than that.
Doesn't seem durable.
It just seems like they're tied up.
I think they are.
They are.
Yeah.
In the packet here, it says that they're aluminum composite
Yeah.
signs.
So the new ones that he's proposing, perhaps.
Yeah, that's what I thought I read too,
Okay.
was to get rid of that, was
Canvas.
to make these more permanent. Did we get it right, or? Okay.
How
So
is
this-
he okay on his signage calculations?
The town asked that LaBella review that.
Well, no.
I'll have it for you at the next meeting.
And then that's also for panels on the pole mount, right?
Yeah, I'll go through the entire sign section of the code.
I thought I read it
Yeah,
someplace too.
if I'm right, he can have the sign on the pole.
Any other questions? The applicant's not here. Think we could, any other? Nope, we can go on to the next case. Michelle?
Okay, next item is case number PB 2024-05-02, request by Marathon Engineering, acting as agent for TK Owner LLC, for signage approval to install one building-mounted sign and 3 tenant panels on existing pylon and monument signs on premises 2255 East Ridge Road, Culver Ridge Plaza in a C Business District.
Good evening. My name is John August. I'm one of the principals at Arundecoit TK Owner, known as Culver Ridge Plaza. I have with me Scott Bilbrey, who's the owner of Blair Sign all the way from California. We're here tonight to finish our application for Burlington Coat Factory, which is the kingpin of this redevelopment, with Five Below and Kids Empire for the old Regal Theater. They will share the rebuilt facade on the former Regal with the other 2 tenants, and they will go on all 3 of our existing pylon signs that have availability. With this approval, we can proceed with the demolition and the rebuild, and I'm going to turn things over to Scott to describe the application.
Hello.
Green light should be on.
Yeah.
I learned that recently.
I was taking lessons from it. Yeah. Burlington Coat Factory, we're shoved back in the corner a little bit so we have some oblique reading angles. We're asking for about a 30% increase in your relief on your sign code. And going with the size of the facade, it's organic to the construction of the design. And this is their national branding that they've just rolled out the middle of last year. I have some other exhibits that they've used all over the country, doing the same thing with the same proportions, if you'd like to see them.
Are those here or those are different?
These are different. These are just examples that we've done at other locations.
Multiple copies or just,
I got several copies here.
you could just pass them around, make sure everybody can see them.
I think it's very similar in size to the Marshalls that was approved about 2 years ago, and I believe it's consistent with some of the renderings we submitted the facade through the planning process.
Did you say that you needed relief?
Here. Michelle, is that your understanding that there's relief needed on this?
That was,
I think,
that was a previous review that was done.
I could not imagine that exceeds this, like, for
I don't know.
plaza. Maybe for an individual building, but not for a plaza.
Processing.
It was also a
that
previous
counts as
employee,
signs
so it wasn't
altogether
anyone
this
that's
way.
currently here. So we'll have to,
who did the review?
yeah, so we'll just take another look at it, but
mean,
I'm sure
it
it's
seemed-
probably similar.
It seems fine, unless they need relief, then they need relief, right, from the ZBA. Is that correct?
So the sign code indicates that certain districts, signage can be determined by the planning board.
I see.
However, saying signage can be determined is a little vague, as opposed to saying these certain items within signage, the dimensions, the this, the that. So,
To be determined.
yeah.
Yeah, the code is.
Yeah, I don't believe we went through for the Marshall application, which has larger letters. I think they were 6-footers on
Yeah,
Marshall.
the Marshalls are 72 inches, 6 foot tall. And, they're right in the middle of the property. So for the size of their facade and their frontage and everything, I think we're asking apples to apples, staying organic to the whole property.
I hear what you're saying. I think it's just important, want to stay consistent amongst applications. So if there's a necessity to provide relief, it's just clear why the reason, so that another applicant can't
I do
say,
have-
well, you did it for them. Okay, cool.
Yep. Well, I mean, I have some elevations of what's out there, just if you guys want to,
On the existing center now.
on the existing center.
And Marshall's is the only store that's actually the same size that we are, same square footage.
Yeah, I think the square footage gets calculated differently in a plaza than it does if it's a freestanding. So I'm not so sure you're even in,
I don't know, I guess it
If we
depends
could
on
just
the
confirm that,
interpretation
I
of the
think that-
code.
so are we gonna look more like,
137 feet of frontage is the Burlington facade that's going on.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I wasn't unaware that a variance was required until now. So
nobody is.
I think we're all trying to find out.
Yeah.
There was
What's
some
there?
stuff, it got into
That's not there.
administrative approval. It wasn't so much a relief in the code, it was, but administrative approval is,
Can we talk about the pylon sign?
sure.
What's gonna go underneath the pylon sign there?
Five Below, one of the other two tenants in the main building. Five Below or Kids Empire, I'm not sure which. The smaller tenants, Burlington being our largest, will be on two of the pylons. Burlington, part of their lease negotiation, required them to take available signage if it was there.
There's two pylons? I'm sorry, there's a
Three.
monument. Is there-
Three, there's a small monument sign right on the corner. It only has about 4 panels of Culver and Ridge, one in the center, and then you recently approved the other one for us about 3 years ago, the new sign to the far end towards the intersection by Wegmans.
Right, but there's not another pylon sign, though.
2 pylons and a monument.
There is two pylons?
Yeah,
there's a Regal,
that one's kind of.
Where the Regal.
Regal is considered one. Then we have the main plaza sign. There's a small monument up at the corner of Ridge and Culver.
Yep.
Any other questions for the applicant? How soon you gonna open?
This is the last contingency in the lease. Would start demo, we hope, within 30 days. It's a minimum of 4 months of demo just to get the structure reasonably level inside, getting all the built-in theater seats out and they're all poured, all the steps. It's quite a project.
So fall time then?
Delivery, worst case, I think we'll pay $150,000 plus $5,000 a day if we're not open by March of '25. Yeah.
Set on a reminder on your phone.
Yeah. We'll
It's
re-remind
gonna be your first customer.
You're gonna miss the coat season.
Can't open from September till March. That's the first time they'll take occupancy. They won't take. We appreciate all the help you've been in this project. We think it's transformational for the plaza. I hope the town enjoys it. I think
Great
it's
to
going to
see
be
it
a great
fill up,
addition.
so, you know, great.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
You want that?
You need us for anything else?
No, but anything you gave us, you probably should give a copy to Michelle.
Is it different from,
Yeah, there was extra
Took some
stuff.
pictures locally. I can add those in the package.
okay.
Is this an extra one?
Again, I appreciate it.
Michelle,
Okay.
thank you. Is there another one in here?
Okay,
Did they give
thank you.
one?
Yeah, he's got the whole, I believe he's got the whole packet in here.
No,
No, these are extras.
those are other
Oh,
examples of other places around
okay.
the country.
Thank you.
So we got 2 left.
Okay. Next case is case number PB 2024-05-03. Request by Colliers Engineering acting as agent for Regional Transit Services and New York Arundecoit Self-Storage LLC for signage approval to amend an existing monument sign on premises 2111 Hudson Avenue in a C Business District.
So as part of our RGRTA Arundecoit Plaza 2 project, we had mentioned during a couple previous meetings that the owner, Life Storage, would like us to raise their existing sign as part of the application, or part of the agreement to sell the parcel. So this is an application to raise the sign 6 feet from 8'2" to 14'2". Or, excuse me, 8 foot ½ inch to 14-foot half-inch. Sorry about that. All we're gonna do is take the panel, raise it up, and have a black enclosure at the bottom, much like the sign we showed. This would be the proposed version. Here.
So what's gonna go in
Why?
the black space?
Nothing.
Nothing. They just
It'll be
want
a
it higher.
base. Just want it higher, so it's more visible. They're afraid because of RGRTA's presence in front of their building, they would like a little more visibility at the street.
So
Here.
I drove by there, and that sign is not hard to see other than maybe some bushes that have grown out. Then I drove by down Ridge Road, and the higher signs seem to be higher because there's other businesses listed below
Listed under
there.
them, yep.
But I didn't have any issue not seeing the sign, and I drove both ways other than maybe some overgrown bushes. So, just my opinion.
Been asking most businesses to try to do lower, basically everybody who comes here wants a pole sign, and say, how about a monument sign?
Well, it's within,
Necessarily a pole sign, but
It's a
going in the
monument
wrong
sign.
direction.
it is a monument sign, and it is within code. Excuse me?
When is RGRTA relocating, because we know the bank is on hold at this moment?
Well, we're moving forward right now. The plans, Andy's group is actually preparing the final, well, the plans are out to bid right now, actually. So we're gonna go to our board in, the end of June, the last Thursday of June, we go to our board for approval. But this is really contingent on us purchasing the property from the, property owner. There's different ways you can do that, and they've asked us to, raise the sign, and that helps us with the purchase of the property, essentially. And I think the other piece of it, I mean, you can see it from the road. I think what they're more concerned about is our operations in front of the building will affect the signage, the ability to see the building from the road, if you will. So right now, there's just a vacant, empty parking lot there. So I think that's what they're concerned about. 'Cause we'll have 40-foot buses parked in front of there for a good portion of the time. 'Cause that's a very active location for us. So you'll have the screening of the buses and the bus shelter now in front of what was currently a vacant parking lot. So that's what they're looking for.
And they still want it internally lit.
Yeah, we're not.
It's the same sign, just raised up 6 feet.
Or else the world can see it. They
That's the
forget where
purpose,
you put
yes.
stuff.
Everybody's.
Right.
Yep.
You could find the
It's
life
for
storage building
signage.
where you're storing stuff.
Hear what Life Storage is trying to say, but there's a Summit Federal Credit Union in front of the building, and
There is.
I'm certain that none of your buses or bus shelters are higher than the roof line on that building. And I'm sure that the sign that's on the building is higher than all, aside from the building, than all of those things. It's a large sign that lights up at night.
Brad, is your mic on?
I can hear you great.
Yeah, I heard the noise.
I'm really trying,
No, it doesn't.
You gotta press and hold.
Here. Go.
I just find it unconvincing. Yeah.
No, we understand. I mean, like I said, like the Summit Federal Credit Union is right on the street, so they are set back from the road, if you will. So I guess their real concern is that they're concerned about navigation of finding their facility. Whether that's the case, I don't necessarily disagree with you, but this is really will help us purchase the property to get our facility in operation there. It's a very important strategic hub for our operations. And we did talk to them about it, and there are other signs, I believe, out there that are consistent with this from a height. And again, we're not adding any additional, we're not changing the size of the sign, we're not changing the lighting of the sign, it'll be the same sign, just
Yeah,
literally
we wanted
6
that
feet
to be a
higher.
monument sign, is my recollection, when it went in as cube to begin with. I mean, I'm not keen about this being 10 feet up in the air, plus whatever size a sign is.
What about coming up half as much? and putting like a brick base or something on it.
We could certainly bring that back to them.
I'm also surprised that they're not asking us and they
Pardon
say,
me?
I'm surprised that they're not asking us and you guys are over here doing it.
Well,
It's part of the condition of this project, so.
right.
No, I get it. You're,
I mean, we're trying to be, we try to work with, there's different ways you can acquire property, as you know.
oh, yeah.
So, we're trying to accommodate what their requests are. We're trying to get this property built because as you know, well, this is the first I've really heard that project's on hold, Citizens Bank. So I guess I'd like to know how long that's on hold. But the reality is we're operating under the assumption that we could be kicked off in 1 month. So if that happens, we have to operate on the street. It's very difficult to operate inside that plaza for us.
Yeah.
So like I said, this is a very key operation for us. It'll affect hundreds, probably thousands of customers every day. It'll affect our operations from a cost side. So for us, raising this 6 feet, I realize what you guys are trying to accomplish. Signs are very challenging, if you will, but from our opinion, raising it 6 feet to allow us to operate for our customers, you know, it's just trying to balance everything here.
Yeah,
what
but
we're
your
trying to do.
customer gets nothing out of that sign being raised.
Well, they get a
Correct,
bus
but what
station.
they get is they get a bus terminal.
Right, but
Get
you
a
don't
really
need
nice
that to
bus
have,
terminal.
What's that?
one
Pardon
thing
me?
doesn't have to
I think
deal
Brad
with the
was
other.
going
Well-
down the right path, though. Do you think you could take back?
Compromise.
Yeah, I mean,
Compromise.
I have no problem with going back to them with that compromise.
Did you all hear it? I just want to make sure.
Raising the
Anybody
height.
not like that compromise?
I mean, I don't love the compromise. But
I don't love the compromise.
I recognize the fact that the overarching benefit to the community is having a nice bus terminal. I understand it's one of the heaviest used bus terminals. So I wouldn't want this to stand in the way of that happening. At the same time, I want to try to be as consistent as possible with the signage stuff. We've really been trying to move away from tall pole-mounted signs and asked everybody to come down. And this is going the opposite way.
So is anybody opposed to the compromise Brad put out there? Go ahead.
Just got one question, just so I have this clear. We're talking about the sign that's labeled as signed to this marathon plan, correct?
Yeah.
What about pushing it closer to Hudson Ave?
Then they have to rewire it and everything.
Pushing it closer to.
Because it sits back a little bit is what you're saying.
Yeah, it was always in a weird spot.
I bet you there's setbacks.
Well, we're allowed
Yes,
to
there is
set
a-
back,
Property there.
I think we're allowed to be set back as high as the sign, correct? So if the sign is only, we said 3 feet shorter, so 11 feet, the sign could be 11 feet from the road instead of 15. So you could move the sign closer to the road if you make it shorter.
Or
Then the proposed
keep
were-
it the size it is, or?
Right, and,
If you keep it the size it is, maybe we could go even closer.
yeah,
That's
based on code.
two options.
So 2
Yep.
options.
And did I understand, you're going to go there anyways, even if this other project's on hold, or does that change things?
I thought you guys knew,
That's
sorry.
just a
I didn't-
curveball right there.
Well, the reason I'm asking is, if we allow this to change, and then it never comes, how do we?
We could make a contingent on. the
I was
sale.
going to just say, we're probably going to put a contingency on it.
Right.
I
I
would-
don't think they should get the sign and not get the bus terminal.
Exactly. Neither do we.
You can tell that I don't think next week we're gonna approve what you just offered us.
But would you consider the 3 feet higher with a stone base around it?
I would prefer to see it go closer to the street,
Same height.
same
close.
size.
There's 2 compromises there. If you
Yeah.
could bring one back, I think we would consider it, right? I'm sorry.
Right? They could advertise on the
You got
bus,
other
that would be
options that we
great.
we can't offer, so, you know.
We have thought about that. Okay, I mean, we can bring those back to the owner of the property. As far as what we're gonna do, with respect to Citizens or what Citizens is doing, I really don't have an answer for you that right now.
Yeah, no, we didn't.
Because my understanding was delayed. I don't know if that turns into not happening. That's a different.
Oh, we just heard hold, right?
We did, it's
It's
on
just
hold.
on hold right now. I believe they're moving forward, trying to get the final plan in.
Okay, so yeah. So from our perspective, we really need to get
Still need
going
to
under
move,
construction here, so. We could certainly bring that back to them. We'll do that.
Do you guys think you're going to come back next week for the hearing, or?
If we have a proposal, we should come back, or do you want us to?
We'd like to.
We'd like
It's
to.
advertised,
I mean,
so,
How,
I mean, anything we propose would be less than
than what we're showing.
what we're showing, right? Is that,
that's up to you. I mean, I'm not doing
well, I'm
the
not gonna
drawing.
make it higher, I suppose.
Right.
Up to that, I think.
And if there's a contingency, then if, then that protects it from just happening without
Well,
the
that means that they
terminal.
wouldn't be able to do anything
Until
until
the terminal goes.
you
Yeah,
guys-
no, we're not gonna get them a sign approved without
Without the
us closing on the property.
Right.
That's not gonna-
But that's going to be what we're going to want to happen, so they should probably be
course.
aware of that too.
Of course.
But moving it closer to Hudson, I think, is one that we all seem to like.
I think that the only thing that jumps to my mind is sometimes, particularly the entrance and exit signs that they have at like drive-throughs, I'm like, can't. So
That's right, yeah,
Yeah.
we don't wanna block
Well,
vision
right.
from that way too.
Yeah, I don't
They
think,
always say that those won't block sight lines every single time, but
I don't
I'll
think
tell
this
you
one
what.
will. I don't think this one will because it's far enough. The drive is actually pretty far to the south on that property.
Yeah.
I mean, it's,
It's pretty close.
Well, the way the property line, did you see the way the property line is there? At
So
the
there's like a
entrance,
little
it kicks in.
nub
Yeah.
yeah,
there.
So that makes the sign even further from the street.
So you
Right.
have to stay whatever the sign height is. But if they kept the same height, you still have to stay another 8 feet.
Okay.
yeah.
back from
That's the
here.
only thing that jumps to me.
Yeah.
And you might have to move the landscaping out too,
Or take it out,
Or-
one of the two.
or whatever.
Yeah.
Just said
Um,
they can't see it.
Does anybody ask Summit what they think of this, or
We did not.
might want to? I mean,
It's not
I
on
hate
their
for them,
parcel. It's not
some-
on their parcel.
oh,
It's a separate parcel, yeah.
never mind. Okay. But they still
can
could
ask
have a
them that.
comment. They could still have a comment.
Well,
Comment.
and they
Wanna make
should
sure
have
it's a public
been
hearing.
mailed
They
to
can-
whoever owns
They
that
may show up,
property.
which could send it into a different direction, so, right?
Sure.
It'd be a lot nicer you came in and said they don't have any issue either way, or
It would be nice.
whatever.
Yeah, we can reach out to them.
I don't think it would hurt.
No, they should have gotten mailed though, because it's a hearing. Whoever owns the property should have gotten a piece of mail.
I don't know if they knew it was going up before
Then they'll come back and they'll want a pylon sign too.
The mailers get sent out and the public hearing sign is
Sign
posted.
Yep.
So
I know the sign's posted. At least it was last Thursday.
All right,
Okay, thank
All
you.
right.
we'll do
Thank
our
you
best.
very
Thank
much.
you very much for listening.
Sorry to break the news to you that way. Now
Andy,
you
just
can go back and
let
tell
me know.
Miguel.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Next case is case number PB 2024-05-04. Request by McMahon LaRue Associates acting as agent for 43 North Real Estate for subdivision approval to subdivide one existing 6.368 acre parcel into two lots on premises 4530 St. Paul Boulevard, otherwise known as 41 Colebrook Drive, in an R1 residential district.
Hello,
everyone.
Start with your names, please.
Joel Barrett with 43 North Real Estate, developer on the project.
Greg McMahon from McMahon LaRue Associates.
So taking into account our last meeting that we had, we went and, created kind of a much more robust plan for the site, identifying parking, taking into account our commercial space or our proposed use of the interior building. We have historic requirements that we're also complying with in this process as well for some of the work that's going to be done inside, and that took into account our subdivision and the ultimate number of units, residential units that we have for the space, and ultimately the commercial space that we ended up with due to a historic requirement of not allowing the former worship space of the basement to be further subdivided, which is part of the reason that we went out with the use variance with a number of commercial units and residential units, because we had an idea that historic may not allow us to subdivide the basement because that used to be the former church. So that was driving a lot of our decision with the interior plan. On the exterior plan, just polling of our tenants and a lot of the people on the waiting list to identify garage space is kind of one of their primary concerns, not for every single unit, but also to place the number of garages on site that we thought would be suitable for our tenants. Not everyone will have a garage space, but a lot of our tenants are going to be older empty nest individuals, people that live in Arundecoit and maybe are downsizing to one vehicle or only need one garage vehicle for one of the members of the apartment. We looked into some landscaping plan, given it's an existing site, and we plan to kind of repurpose and work with what's there. We did add some landscaping. We contemplated drainage on the site. We rethought our dumpster plan because there just didn't seem like a good place to use it, and given the number of apartments, we're going to go with an interior trash room and then toters, which is working on another property that we have with a larger number of units now, depending on what our ultimate commercial tenancy is in the space, which we don't have a tenant that we're presenting with. That could change that, and we would come back for reapproval of a dumpster area. Identified some snow load, put a little bit of exterior lighting on the rear of the building. Really thought about what type of our water and power usage on the site would be, so we've identified some new water service that will also power a sprinkler that we're going to be putting in. Really worked very extensively trying to determine the best way to lay out the interior, and some of that was driven by our historic consultants to get to a number of 22 units. We wanted this property to be very similar to a property that we built in a residential neighborhood in Fairport along the canal, and it had a portion of the building with the rooftop addition that had been extremely successful. We positioned the rooftop addition in the rear of the building to be able to not take away from the public right-of-way view of the building, also along historic requirements. So we're kind of doing this lock and step with preservation. Christopher Brandt, who is, you probably know from the town of Arundecoit, is our architect on the preservation side, and then working with Chris Costanza as our primary architect of record for the project. So what we tried to do is identify area that we thought that would be something that you would want to look at. We did a little bit of a sightline survey in this. We definitely thought about some noise and positioning. We had a mechanical engineer involved in concepting the best layout plan for condensers and also the best way to obscure those, understanding some of the decibels associated with that, taking into account landscaping, taking into account the breezeway that we're going to be using, elevator position within the building. So we did quite a bit of considerations given the stage of the project that we're at right now, and I think we came up with a very suitable plan to kind of best utilize this building, not repurpose the site, and really focus on just this location on site, and attempt to rectify some of the issues that you called out in our previous sketch plan review that were really helpful to go through and think through all of that. So I appreciate that.
Currently, you're only looking for subdivision, right?
Well, I mean, we did the architectural concepts. I do think that they're deficient in terms of being able to get full site plan approval, so I'm thinking like some level of commentary on that. I know that we're still making decisions on the building exterior materials on the rooftop addition, because some of that is just, we're waiting for feedback from SHPO.
This is advertised though as a subdivision,
Subdivision,
not as a site plan,
not
so
for site plan.
it can't happen this month because the public hasn't been legally notified.
Correct.
Can I get clarity? Last time you were here, there was a lawsuit. Is that all resolved?
Nope, it's been submitted, and but we have been instructed by our legal counsel that we can approve at our own risk.
Same thing. They're going
So-
forward at their own risk at this point.
It's a different action. The lawsuit is with the use variance. This is their prerogative to move forward with subdivision.
Understanding that it could all it's all on their risk.
When people keep asking me about it, I keep telling them it's like Whole Foods. They kind of continued along the process at their own risk until there was an ultimate resolution. But it is in front of the justice, so it is reviewed by New York State Supreme Court right now, so both sides have submitted their
So for next
I'd say
week, what are you
arguments.
asking us to do?
It's this plot,
Well,
205.
Subdivision.
It's subdivision, but the site plan drives the subdivision, so, I mean, for context, we needed to prepare the subdivision to accommodate the site plan.
So
I mean,
would
if-
you like to withhold this and come back at another time when we can publicly advertise it?
Well,
The subdivision's advertised.
Yeah,
Subdivision.
but
We
he can decide that
the
he wants everything
the
that he
subdivision
wants.
can happen,
Yeah, I'm good with
but,
that.
but the reason that the site plan is included in this is because we needed to know what we were doing with the site in order to develop the subdivision. I mean, if we just threw out a random subdivision and we found out we couldn't accommodate.
You needed to determine for yourself what
Right.
subdivision
So-
would make sense.
So as you look at this, you look at the site plan,
Some
and
feedback
that,
is also,
that brings context to the subdivision.
But you're only gonna ask for the subdivision approval at this point.
So I don't recall ever doing a subdivision for a building that was connected. So how do we address that?
I believe we did one for the Episcopal, St. Cecilia's.
Yes.
Yes,
Oh,
we
yes,
did.
we did. Okay.
And we've actually, I thought we did this at one point. I don't remember how far we
Really
got.
close.
We came really close
Yeah, it
to
got-
doing
it got
this. I
cold.
think we were just questioning some utility
Utility
work
connections, yeah.
and the connection to the church through this causeway, but if you're gonna do it as an easement or something,
Yeah, I'll also add that, I know they're not on the agenda tonight, but 550, 560 Titus is also, it's technically two buildings, but there's a party wall between them right on the line. It's, yeah, a lot of,
Well, St. Cecilia's did it
Access.
for me.
right, but a lot of making sure that there's access agreements for all of this pretty much, the parking, et cetera. So what is the division in that breezeway? Is there anything on that dividing line in the breezeway?
there will be, so there is a door that we're going to utilize access for because it's the only rear door to the building, and then there is obviously a connection there. So the plan was an interior demising wall and then a maintenance agreement to, determine who is maintaining the space because it's shared. So the maintenance agreement is something that would be drafted as part of the subdivision. There's also, there is going to be a separation of the gas utility because the gas utility does run from the school, which was the building that was there first, to the church. So there is notation in a contract that once we have subdivision approval, we will go quote the separation of the gas services. Our building is going to be 98% electric. I'm not sure if we'll even maintain the gas service because RG&E has a big initiative to push everybody into what they're calling clean heat. How the electricity is actually generated, that remains to be seen, but we will be electric heating the building with high efficiency mini splits and then electric water heaters, and potentially gas would be there to service a commercial enterprise at some point in the future. There's also a water service that runs through to go to the former rectory space, and we will be having an easement for that. And then otherwise, I think that would handle the majority of it. We do have cross-access easement in the rear of the property to be able to gain access to Washington and St. Paul, and then we are working out kind of a Monday through Saturday because to accommodate the commercial parking requirement of, I think it's 4 spaces or 6.
21, to get the total, we're at 21 spaces Monday through Friday type of.
Yeah, so we have a sharing agreement that's being drafted as part of this process as well.
So I got one question for you, Kate. So with St. Cecilia's, if I recall, I think they came in with, they had all those agreements mapped out. So do we have to make that contingent if we go forward?
I would make that contingent,
Okay,
absolutely.
because you don't have those right now.
Well, physically, we show them on the plan, but as far as written agreements, those.
Some are there in the contract in terms of, like making the formal application of subdivision to have them included on the deed. I think that would be, the contract would drive some of that. So I think the majority of them are in the contract that we have.
I think you can bring.
Or acquisition of the property,
We're
but-
just going to make it contingent that those agreements are in place.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
The new lot doesn't create, it's code conformant. complies with the current code,
It does, yes.
setbacks, all of that,
It does. Well, with the exceptions you were talking with the
parking.
the connector.
The connector,
through
and then there's some agreements that need to be put in place in order to meet minimum parking spaces. But otherwise, you're totally compliant with the code.
Yes.
Okay.
Go ahead, John. You gotta talk into the microphone, though.
Oh, here, John. Sorry, it's off too, so.
Just one question regarding the proposed access easement you're showing on the plat map. So that's just going to cover that driveway that connects Washington to St. Paul?
Yes, and that's not on our property line, so probably on this second part of the site plan, page 2 of 5, which show this access easement area, and then it shows kind of the, commercial Monday through Friday parking easement as well.
Say that again?
So it's kind of outlined. It's still part of Lot 1, and I think one of the biggest things with the diocese was they wanted the lot to be contiguous,
Okay.
and that's why we kind of carved around, but then also knowing that we were going to need access at some point, our attorneys drafted an access agreement as part of the contract, so they are in agreement with it. And some of that, again, are parts of the contract that have been agreed upon that will need to go into, documents to support the subdivision and deed and place them on record.
But the meat and bounds of that easement, will that be strictly that roadway going east-west?
Yeah.
So for the proposed parking garage on Lot 2, the one on the eastern side,
Oh, I see
I
what
know
you're
where-
saying.
if I'm exiting and entering, I got to go onto Lot 1 and I'm
Well,
outside that easement.
Yeah, we can modify it. I know what you're talking about, John. Well,
Yep.
we can modify that to
As soon as you mentioned that, I knew exactly what he was
address
referring
the
to.
person backing out or pulling into the garage. Yeah.
Not that I think this is a big deal, but I just want to ask, the proposed parking garages, will they meet setback requirements?
I believe it's 5 feet on the garages.
So,
Off the property line.
off the property line, so for instance,
this is
this
part
one,
of the subdivision.
especially on the right-hand side, proposed parking garage, if that's now a property line, will that require a variance in order to build that close?
Here, I don't know if this is just because the architect placed this, or if he gave you dimensions. It does seem like it's wider.
I think we need to take a look at that placement.
Okay.
And then entering those parking spots, you have to come in from the adjoining property, correct?
Right, and
So
that's
that's
what
where
we
we
were
would
just.
need to modify the
We'd
easement.
modify, we'd just extend the easement up.
Got it,
For
got it, sorry.
access to accommodate pulling into those spots.
Okay, understand. Thank you.
For a fence.
So the-
What was the previous one, Brad? I missed it. You said something was drawn.
That I didn't think it was a big deal, but I was concerned that with the proposed parking garage being immediately adjacent to the property line, it could create the need for a variant. We'd be setting them up to need to have a variance.
That's a good point.
But,
Accessory garage structure, so setbacks are a little different.
right, but I don't think there's zero.
Zero, right.
But if you're gonna move that out, right, so but it's
Still
still
make
not
the lane.
technically your lot, it's the cross easement.
I think the
we'll have to take
cross-access
that, yeah.
easement is
Yeah.
still, would be relevant.
What are those garages made of? Are they like a brick structure?
I think we're planning just kind of stick framing, and depending on,
So it's
coming up with
like
a compliant siding, so slab on grade,
Garage? Three
traditional
doors.
garage, yeah. Overhead doors, some type of siding, roofing.
So just to touch back on the variances, if it's not meeting the proper setback, you check the square footage as well, because in the R1 district, they can't be more than 900 square feet. That might require an additional variance over 900 square feet.
Per garage unit or total?
Total, 900 square feet. And if we're calculating it correctly, it looks like one is 972.
Yes, assuming that it's, these parking spaces are 9 by 18, then that puts it at about 972 square feet.
Yeah, 20 by 20 is a two-car garage approximately, 400. So they may have to be divided into more structures, more individual structures or variants.
I'm not sure. It seemed like a garage, a wood frame garage is what it seemed like they're talking about.
But would that come up during site plan or subdivision plan that we're seeking now?
I have no idea. You have to ask.
What about doing like a portico on it, so it wouldn't have the sides, and you could do solar on the top, that you could drive
Does the carport still sort of
like
trigger
a
that?
carport thing?
I'd have to look at the actual code section, but if it talks about like, it's usually like gross floor area, and then it wouldn't count if it doesn't have walls.
Walls on it.
Right. So, but I'd have to look, but it might not count for that square footage.
I mean, I saw this in Atlanta at a parking lot that they used the ropes for.
In Atlanta?
Yeah.
Oh.
They got the sun down there.
It was good for rain,
Yeah.
because they do get a lot of rain down there.
I've heard the snow
Right.
blowing into those, people almost prefer to not, to have uncovered parking.
But you
just
do have
because
the
they'll
church
have a little
parking,
bit
or
more.
church blocking some of it,
Yeah, that's true.
and the building blocking some of it, so we're way away from that, I think, at this moment.
I think overall the lines make sense.
Yeah, the
and-
lines
and-
make
and
perfect
whatever.
sense to me.
I just wouldn't want us to set you up
For a variance.
in a path when we, like to your point before, you are presenting a portion of the site plan, so we do know that. So I
Right.
wouldn't want to send you on a road indirectly towards a variance.
Yeah.
Since we know.
Right.
I remember driving back there as a kid in the snow, and that was a little bit different than, it's like spinning around in the parking lot and whatnot.
If you haven't already, you might want to double check with the building department in terms of the location of those garages, and even for the connection from the apartments back to the existing church, because once you start dropping lot lines in, there could be building code requirements that come in. Like specifically for the garages, there might be fire separation requirements and whatnot.
Fire ratings. Okay, our architect didn't come tonight because, but fire,
I remember last time we were here, we talked a little bit about the width of that drive aisle, and I do think that that can be related to the subdivision to
The
make sure
entry?
you have enough room.
on the entry or the middle?
This one that comes off of Colebrook, it looks like that's been revised. Is that so?
You know, we had proposed,
Like an extra-
well, the site plan proposed to widen it to 20 feet. It's about 17 to 18 feet right now, and we were gonna,
Stick
make
with
it-
that initially, I think, right?
yeah, make it uniformly 20 feet,
Okay,
which is sufficient for
two ways.
two-way traffic,
And
yeah.
the lot lines will support that.
Yes, that was, one of the things we looked at. It would be widened towards the school.
Okay.
Not towards the
Not
lot.
towards the neighbor. Okay.
There are no dumpsters. Right
Totes.
now, they're proposing totes. Yep. They would be internal and brought out on the day of collection.
Back and forth.
What happens, well, I guess it's not important to subdivision, never mind.
I think if you have, I mean, if there's site plan questions that, I mean, that's kind of why we made it slightly more robust, is to kind of drive some of that discussion too, so.
So,
Happy
I
to
mean, the
talk about
question,
some of
the
that.
unrelated question was, if someone moves out and they have like a sofa and,
Yeah.
someone moves out and they have like a sofa, how do they manage that?
Well, I'm hoping they take it with them. But I know that's not the reality, so, well, we do have, see now, some of our other properties are in the city and they have bulk pickups, which I know Arundequoit doesn't have, so it's gonna have to be a bridge that we cross. Usually I take a picture of it and send it out to some of our maintenance, or, some people end up taking those.
And your
Coming and picking
carrier
them
or
up,
your
but,
provider may be able to do it for you for a fee, so.
right. And that's why we usually, whenever we're microphone. We've actually been, I would say that we've had extremely good luck with like tenants placed and just people cleaning out and, withholding security deposit until we have our final check and walkthrough. So our process kind of assists with that. and if there is something bulk, then I don't think we'd put it in a dumpster anyway, so we'd kind of have to deal with it on our own, or have somebody take it away, or the one thing that we have done in the past is drop it in front of a city property that we own, because they do bulk pickup on. Now, that's completely outside this conversation,
You can
but
make it part of the provision, whoever moves in, they gotta take care of those type of things.
it's definitely in our lease that they leave a broom clean finish, and we do have a checklist that we do when we check tenants in and out, just so they ensure that if they don't want to say that, oh, something was broken on their, to identify damages or things like that, so.
Any other questions? Go ahead, John.
Not necessarily subdivision question, but if we're talking about site plan stuff, on the eastern side of the driveway coming in off Colebrook there, adjoining 61 Colebrook Drive, if we could provide some sort of fencing for that resident there, just because with these being apartments, you're going to have vehicle trips at all, times a day, so.
I think we talked about that the last time they were here, didn't we?
Yeah. We had mentioned some of the lighting on that. And for this, the residence that's there, the residence directly next to it, the vacant property?
61 Colebrook Drive.
Yeah, this one.
It's something that we can talk about. It's a property that, I would love to see that renovated because it's a really nice looking home. I don't know if it's vacant currently. I think the owner, the last I checked, was someone not living there, right? Or somebody out of town. But it's something that we can look at for sure with the site plan. I know they recently took down the garage, and it does appear to be vacant while it's still being maintained, though. It's a nice looking house. I actually like that house a lot.
Any other question? Okay, any questions you have for us?
If we're just focusing on this subdivision plan, how does that tie into things that we're doing in the site plan? If you are able to grant that, then
Sir, I'm sorry, it's not a public hearing. It's just a planning board workshop. No, sir.
Can I say one word?
No, you can submit anything to the town, but you gotta do it in writing or come to the public hearing when we have the public hearing.
Monday, there's a public hearing, and there'll be a chance for public comment.
I forgot where we were.
I can't believe you haven't mentioned parking.
So where were we at with the
Subdivision.
you had a question? I'm sorry.
I'm just, if we go through the subdivision and then we're obviously going to be gaining things during the site plan that, could cause us to move forward, the subdivision would kind of be not finalized until we finalize site plan approval, is that I'm saying. We're not going to subdivide it and then not be
So we're
able to
kind of back
obtain
where
site
Alan
plan
was at the
approval.
beginning was,
Yeah.
did you want to hold off and do them together?
You want to hold off, that would be my advice if you're not ready for this, because once we draw the lines and we tell you that's it, that's it.
Yeah.
So if something
You have to come back.
Yeah.
in the site plan necessitates additional room and you need to renegotiate, then we'd have to go through all of this all over again.
We'll be paying for a whole nother set of plans too, right?
Right.
So,
I don't see a lot changing because we've had this in front of us for years now, realistically, to get to the point that we're at. So in terms of what we're eligible to, they're, this is as much as we can have. I don't think they're
is
willing
there
to.
a reason that you want to do it? It's all up to you.
Yeah, I guess I'll have to discuss with Greg and our team and just, provide some type of information prior to Monday. But, I like the idea of doing them in conjunction with each other just because there's the continuity of having everything done at once versus, we have to move the garage over but, I wasn't expecting to be approved actually because I was thinking we were at a combination site and.
Well, it would also let you
plan,
know
but-
right away if those garages need a variance.
Right, so that's helpful too.
Because us doing a subdivision isn't going to tell you anything.
No, nothing about the site, so.
I think it also would be helpful, if you did want to move ahead with subdivision only, it would be better if the shared parking agreement was also part of
some of
that
those.
at the same time, because you're not currently you're not meeting without that. So, we could do it with a condition, but it would just be cleaner and neater if it were done with that, or you came with that in place, because it would
That
make
makes
it
sense.
easier, I think.
Because we'll probably make it a contingent, you can't file a subdivision until You meet
either
all-
way.
Site plan requirements anyway?
Yeah, normally you want those easements filed prior to the subdivision.
Well, we're gonna require it anyway, because.
And everything about the connecting building would be helpful too, that
Yeah.
they provide.
Okay, well, we'll regroup and then kind of communicate back to you guys.
Okay. Is there any other business, oh, I'm sorry, any other questions? Sorry. Does
No.
Labella have any comments?
No, not at this time. Obviously, our review is a little bit more limited because we just stuck to subdivision, but it was mostly having all of those agreements in place.
Right. You can always do a sketch plan again too. There's nothing that says you can't do that at some time.
I would say a sketch site plan for sure.
We
Okay.
like sketch plans.
I think they're good. It was useful for me.
Thank
so
you.
I appreciate it.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other business before the
No, no, I have no more business.
meeting's adjourned?